So the next is about each of you. Let's see. We maybe spend like 20 minutes ish here because I want you to talk about the data set that you decide to use, okay, for your project. I mean, it's not final, but you can change, of course, but based on what you have found. So part of the exercise for today is that we should look at the data set that we decide to work on, each of you, and then do some demo of the disclosure risks. Okay, so I'm just gonna go with this order on GitHub. So I'm just gonna go with Herrick, do we have, is it this one?
You can look at the disclosure risk homework 2 PDF.
Okay. Yeah, you can actually come to the front. That might be easier. I mean, like you can come to here so you can scroll down. Like, I think I always miss where I should be going. So we have Herrick describe, it doesn't have to be complicated. Maybe just like the data and then what you have done. And then if you have any questions or like asking for advice from the class, feel free.
Yeah. So the data set that I used, I've actually had previous experience with in my other statistics courses, but this is the IPUMS, and they actually have a lot of data sets that you can take, whether it's about to do with health or economic data. And for this, I just kind of stuck with the economic data. And so on this website, actually, you can basically select the variables that you want to assess, and then you can extract the variables, which makes it very easy to just input it into R and then look at any relationships that you want to. And so for my case, I looked at just looking at one specific year. I took the variables sex, race, and health coverage, the school attendance, the field of degree of the individual, employment status, and the income, which is based on salary. And then you can see from this table over here, there's race D, there's degree field D, and then employment status D, which is just a variable that shows a more detailed version. And so they have more subcategories that explains exactly like what the individual's characteristics are. And then so I kind of sum up just all the variables that I have. And so the only continuous variable that I have in my data set would be the income wage variable. And so that I easily assess that would be the most sensitive. And so I kind of explained that compared to the other variables, race would be the second most sensitive, just based on, I just plot the distribution of race and each variable after. And so I just go through each one. And then just to go through identification disclosure, from our first lecture slide, I think, I just took the filter function and then looked at the dimensions of what it would look like if I were to know, let's say the sex is 1, which is male, and then the race is 1, which is white, and then the school equals 1, which is the school attendance. That means they're currently in school. And so just looking at the probability of being able to discover that one individual. And so I looked at, for example, let's say we knew, if we're looking here, let's say we knew that the income of the individual was $401,000, which is crazy, but we would be able to know exactly who that individual is. But let's say they were only $1,000 off and it was $402,000 for the salary income, then we would have to select between 119 individuals. And so that's something that I want you to note and like be wary about. And then I kind of, just for this assignment, I kind of just experimented looking at different variables and like how the relationships kind of change between what we want to look for. And I guess at the very, at the very bottom, I kind of, for fun, I just like put my own characteristics. Let's say I was in the data set, like what, or would the probability be of like someone trying to find me? And like if I put in all my variables there, then it would be a probability of about like it would be like about 5%. And so yeah, that's something that I thought would be interesting, and so hopefully I can get more out of the data set and just going through more research, and then just looking, yeah, just starting with the attribute disclosure. But
Sounds good. Any questions? Comments? Any comments about how Henrik did for the continuous data for the disclosure risk? So I think it's the 401000, the two cases. Oh, sorry, go down.
oh, sorry.
Yeah. It's, I think you're doing right down here. So checking 401000, it's 1, right? And then checking just 1,000 more, it's 120. Did anybody else do identification disclosure for continuous data? And if you did, like, were you using something similar, like looking at exact matching here? Because this is exact matching.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, yeah,
I kind of did the same for my data, but I put my continuous data into categories. So my data was a Airbnb data, and my sensitive data is like how many days the property is available for renting.
So it's
and, yeah, I just like put it into like say like solely rental properties and maybe like vacation house and like people who are like living in the house and also renting the house as like part of the house to other people. And I just put like a category of like how many days they are available, and I put them into 4 categories and trying to see if you can base other information to identify which type of property it is.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
How do you split the categories into just 4? Like, how do you decide? Is it equal?
It was like kind of like my intuition for like how you would categorize the property. So like I did like if you are like the property is available from more than
let's just have if you don't mind. Yeah, thank you, Eric. Like, do you mind coming over? Let me. Yeah, I mean, but let's keep in mind like how we can do things about continuous data. So I think it's the disclosure risk, right? Yeah, go ahead. So you can maybe give us an overview of what the data is like. As well, I mean, just
I didn't really like show the data table.
Oh, okay, that's fine. All right, so show us what you think is.
I wrote like a short description about what's in the data.
Sounds good. So let's see maybe the part that you discretize that variable, right? You're saying.
So like I said here like I put 331 to 360. It should be like 365 days to be like solely rental properties. Then it's like 271 to 330. That's just property maybe used for vacation house and are only used for vacation by the owner and are rented as Airbnb other times. And then I also have a category between 61 and 270 days. And 0 to 60 days. And
so this is for any property, I guess. I mean,
like for all the Airbnb properties listed in New York City.
In New York City, okay. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so I think, Henrik, I mean, just going back to your question, like, I think the way that, like, Riz is doing this, I think makes sense, especially, like, they're just looking at, I mean, the entire, all of the Airbnb listing, and then some of them might just be rental only, right? And that will be the vacant days, right? Like
will be the property with the highest days available for renting.
Oh, so not about vacant. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I guess
like how many days in a year they are available for renting.
I see. So that will be available, I guess. So that was available in the data set that you found.
You're right.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's kind of sensitive because like it tells people what that property is for.
Yeah.
Since you have the location of the property, it's like it can be really prone to like theft, I guess, or something like that.
No, but a good thing, I mean, for this particular continuous variable, I think it probably makes sense to discretize it because, well, if you think about, I don't know, it's 365 days, right? Like available for rental, and I mean, the numerical value of that probably doesn't mean much in terms of what is 360 or like compared to 300 and. But turn it into a categorical variable. But in this case, this is more like okay, my question for everybody is, when Reese did this, is this a ordered categorical or an unordered categorical in your mind? So he did that for 0 to 60 days is mainly used by its owner, right? Like the type. and then 61 to 220 is
270.
270. Yeah, thanks for used by the owner and sometimes for rental, and then the other two. So do you think once we do this discretization, do you think it's a ordered categorical or unordered categorical based on what we discussed just now? I mean, we don't need to like model it now, but like later, if you think this will be the most sensitive, then you might, yeah, we have to figure out like a way to synthesize it. So given your understanding of the variable, do you think like a multinomial, like either the logistic regression, multinomial logistic or the directional multinomial will work? Or should we consider it as a ordered categorical that we probably need something else?
So with ordered categorical, do we want to like use the information that's kind of in the neighboring areas to like inform?
What do you mean?
I just never worked with ordered categorical before, but like, what is the usefulness of having like that, like understanding? Because I mean, it is ordered. You do have an ordering of like.
Right, in some sense, yeah. So the methodology that we covered so far actually doesn't work for ordered categorical because if you think about the multinomial, there's no ordering, right? Like it's like 1 through 6 for race or 1 through 4 if we consider this as unordered. Yeah, so that would be something like we might not talk in class, but I would like definitely share some methodology for doing ordered categorical variable. You probably have heard the term is probit regression. I don't know if you've heard. It's fine, but it will be like a way to take care of the ordering. Like so, pretty much you can think of like say it started off as a continuous variable, right, from 0 to 36, 360, and then we discretize it, but like four parts, right? But they're like ordering here. So the probit modeling or like similar models, what they do is they assume there is a underlying unobserved continuous variable. Yeah, so you model that, but then what you observe is only the truncated, like say from 0 to 60 is category 1, from 60 to 61 to 220 to 70 is category 2 and all that. So you have to build that into the model, but the understanding, like the way that they do it is, I assume there's an underlying continuous variable underneath. It's a latent variable. Yeah, I never observe it. I only observe 1, 2, 3, 4. But then we can write. I mean, you can imagine sort of like writing the model in that way, and then you're able to model that. But I will put up like some methodology. If I have time, I'll also write some simple JAX code if you want. But you can probably figure that out. Question? Oh no.
I'm cutting my hair.
Okay. Good. All right. So
Yeah, so I just broke it down into 4 categories, and then
take your time.
Yeah, so there are other variables in the data set that I think is like available to intruders. That includes the geographic group, which is Manhattan, Bronx, just like the big district of the New York City, and then it's like the smaller areas. And they are a lot of areas. They are like over 1,000 like distinct area codes, and I just didn't use it for my analysis. And there are also like room types, which is private room, apartment, and entire house, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and there are also like price for a night, which is also available on the application, which is like Airbnb website.
So that's another continuous variable.
Yeah, right. But I didn't use it. For this analysis, I just focused on the bigger geographic group and the room type. So I just did a filter for Manhattan and private room. So there are 847 rooms in category 1, which is available for renting for over 330 days in a year. And this like there are 500 something for number category 2, 2,049 for them category 3, and 4,518 for category 4. And I just basically just calculate the probability of identification risk in regards to identifying the category of the house.
Yeah. But you can also do like once you have the other variables like what Eric did, like you can match based on those and then looking at the smaller one. But this is a great example of discretizing a continuous variable into a categorical. But then of course we just talked about, well, later on when we want to do the synthesis for this type of discretized variable, it's probably ordered, and then we probably need something else to figure it out. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank
Anybody else? Anybody else did a kind of like continuous variable that we might just spend the time talking about down here? And Isaac, you can jump in, but I will just ask you to share your screen if you do that. But anybody else here?
Mine were mostly categorical. I had one like kind of ordinal variable, so I imagine it'll be like a Poisson draw.
Okay, so let me let me
one
stop
there.
sharing. You can share, so you know, like on the screen at the bottom, there is a share button,
Okay.
and then you can share your write-up. I mean, whichever, like from whichever. I put every. I mean, you can access it from the GitHub, but you can also just put up your PDF.
I was gonna say I have the PDF loaded here, so I'll share the screen briefly.
Right. So go ahead. Mhm.
Let's see. So mine is elderly and disability data from I'm from Seattle, so from the city of Seattle posts all sorts of public data, and I figured like people on city services would be a data set where there'd be a lot of identification disclosure, and you'd want to maintain confidentiality.
Mhm.
So like for example in the PDF write-up I did, one of the things the city tracks for people on city services is like geographic location, age range, all these which are categorical, or we'll have a multinomial distribution. But one that I think would end up in any synthesis model would be a number of children, and the city is of the variables they track, they're pretty good about tracking that one.
Let me jump in there really quick. Sorry. So a number of like counts of children. Yeah, sometimes I mean you can just work with the counts like I guess Isaac was saying earlier. Maybe you can use a Poisson model. So that's another thing we haven't talked about. But naturally, you can imagine this Poisson models for counts. But sometimes you can also turn that count variable into a discretized categorical variable. And then in that case, will be an ordered categorical variable. Okay, keep going. Sorry for interruption.
Oh yeah, so no, I was just gonna jump in because you asked if anyone had any non-categorical ones. So I was gonna say that number of children,
Right.
one kind of a corner case, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Not fully categorical, but.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to continue?
Oh yeah, I can. So my so I took a subset of the data, just in the Seattle area, and then the instruction said to be creative in the proposed utility measure. So I just did like taking Euclidean distance between one entry and all the others, and those that had a distribution of sort of far off or a greater density of far off distances, I considered more vulnerable. And so then any like synthesis model, I think you'd want to like make sure those distances are preserved.
Right.
Or if like they correlate to one another, would be the utility measure there. So.
Right. So so I guess this leads to a utility measure thinking about this I guess will be you can say like global utility, but also maybe analysis specific. So what Isaac was proposing is what if I guess you pick a few variables and then look at the Euclidean distance between I guess the ones. Are you talking about like Euclidean distance of those variables in the original data set compared to the synthetic, or just like within the original data set, because that's what you have, right?
So the measure of disclosure risk, like distance is itself kind of a measure of
I see. Okay.
density of distances is itself a measure of disclosure risk. Like if all of your distances are far off, like you're a pretty unique person and probably have a higher disclosure risk within the data set. But then any any synthesis you do, like you wouldn't want the same, like the synthetic distribution of distances to correspond 1-to-1 to the real distribution of distances.
Right. Right.
Because I guess that would help people in the data set.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So the distance that Isaac is referring to, if I understand it correctly, is looking at like just in the original data, you're looking at like distances between, I mean, there's certain, because you're considering multiple variables, so you have to like figure out what kind of distance you want to calculate. But sounds like given the variables that like say we care about, or like we think we can do sort of like matching, or in terms of looking at the risks, we can see how or which observations are the one are isolated from the others. Okay, and then those will be the ones to have higher risks. So I noticed, I mean, like Isaac like using the code and here like the names and stuff, like I think you're using clusters, right?
In the
no, down there, I think the way you're using for like clustering, were you like running a clustering algorithm to see which one is isolated, or are you just like looking at Euclidean distance in some way?
So I just did Euclidean distance. I think a natural extension would be like what hierarchical cluster based on that. And I'll say I use Euclidean distance instead of like a Mahalanobis or standardized distance, just because so many of the categorical variables end up being dummy variables.
Right. Right.
So like but yeah, no, like clustering I think would be a natural extension there.
So actually, thank you, Isaac. So actually, since we're just on this topic, because so when we're thinking about like risks, that's what we're focusing here, and then later about utility, which we're going to talk about today. Oh, let me just finish talking. Yeah, talk about today. You will see that in some way, I mean, utility and risk are like very much related to each other. If you think about like doing clustering algorithm, which is one, from it is one of the three methods that they propose in the Wu et al. Paper, how you can do the utility. But like what Isaac was saying, when you do clustering, when you have, or like calculating distance, when you see some observations far away from others, then those will be like highly risky records as well. So clustering is a way to think about risks and to think about the utility. I think both of them are pretty cool to talk about. So let me maybe we can, so for those who haven't got the chance to talk, I will ask you for advice about the implementation of the utility later, just as an interaction. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course, yeah. About Isaac's or?
No, about mine, yeah.
Oh, sure, okay. All right, so Kevin just wants to. Where is this? Let me, give me a second, I have to share the screen because others cannot see this. All right, tell me which one is that? This one?
The disclosure is
Okay.
stuff.
All right,
Yeah.
so Kevin has it here.
Yeah, so I just, the data set was like, I described it at the top
Oh, okay, yeah.
here, and it was like, it was like the first paragraph talking about like mental health, like income and sex and everything, like categories for like a health survey. And then, but when I was doing the analysis, I was getting a lot of NA values because it turns out that like a lot of variables were described within the universe of other variables. I think that's what the terminology was used in.
Oh, I see.
And I don't know if that was like a common thing to do in these kinds of surveys. And I just wanted to know like what's the best way to, because like obviously then I got a lot of like unique records because like out of like the 720,000, maybe only like 15 or 20. Yeah.
I was using the same.
Like,
They're all.
because like so if you scroll down a little bit to get like,
further down.
Yeah, like some of these like for work hours and stuff, or like well the age everybody answered
Yeah, I
age
see.
or race and stuff. Like for this one example.
This one?
Or I think
further down.
like this one.
Okay, yeah.
Like the cohabitant, like this is like married if you're married or not.
Oh, I see.
If you're married, then based on like that, were you once married or currently
Oh,
divorced,
I
something like
see. So those are, I guess, okay. So those are, I guess, the, I wouldn't say nested questions, but like it. Are you talking about like in the survey, like if
Yes,
you
so
answer like part A, like those ones are like if you answer yes to part A, go to next question or that
Exactly,
kind of stuff.
And so then a lot of
I
NA values
see.
except for like a certain group of them.
Oh, good point. Okay. Yeah, so so I mean I don't know for sure, but I feel like it's definitely like very common. Like in terms of if you design the survey in that way, I mean, not surprisingly you're gonna get that. What I would say is if I were to do that, I might have to do certain cleaning of the data and then maybe just select, I don't know, maybe tricky, but select rows that not like deleting the
Or kind of
image
like
directly.
group it into ways so that
Yeah, and then you can go from there. So I think that's actually open-ended question how you want to do it, because there are different. I mean, there are like different arguments about how much like of the grouping you want to do. Because well, if I only have 100 observations to start with, like I group them into 100 different groups. Maybe what's the point of doing like that? And especially if you think about the risk and the utility later, because for each group, if you're going to do that, then the smaller the number of observations, the harder to model it. So the utility might be affected, but also for the risk as well if you have so small numbers. So all of those are related. I mean, intertwined. So but good point. So yeah. So if you see, I guess for Sarah as well for this type of data, you will have to be careful about what you're going to do for that. But I mean, those are open-ended questions for you to answer. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Like, when I was doing data sets
let
on
me get yours.
salaries, so I was just
Here,
like,
right? Yeah.
yeah. Oh wait,
Which one is
wait, it's okay. It's on my computer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but yeah. So
Yeah, I just have a general question because I was looking at data sets on salaries,
Mhm.
and I found that a lot of them have people's names on them, and it's like very public. I found a lot of data sets. Actually, I found that like the website government salaries, I couldn't strap the data set down, but I have found also another data set which has like names on them. Do you mind go to like
Sure.
the website like government salary?
So I mean, I think in this country, like government employees' salary are public information, right? And also, I mean, not just like not just like officials, but like not bachelor's a private college, but if it's a public college like SUNY, like Albany, yeah, you can find out. Yeah, it's public available. Okay, so what's the site?
GOV salary.
GOV salary.
Yeah,
Yes.
that one.
Okay.
And when I searched,
This one?
like I know some professors in UIUC, and I searched their name, I actually
And then it's
found
gonna pop
their
out. Okay.
yeah. Found their.
All right.
So
So.
I'm wondering what I can do about.
All right. Good point. So first, Isaac, do you mind mute yourself? I think we are hearing some of the typing. All right, and then okay. Well, I don't want to pick up any person here to do this search, but I'm curious. Let's see. So I'm curious, like say, because you're right. I mean, some data is public available. The tricky thing I would say is, other than the salary itself, like on this website, like do you see? Let me just Johnson. I don't know. Like that was what was recommended. I was just like trying to see, for example, like because we know like for the disclosure risks. Okay, let's just do, I don't know, coaching specialist. So this is the data that like this type of the data you're talking about.
Yeah. You could actually like customize the colleges you want to look into.
I see.
And then you could see all the professors with their salaries on there.
Right. Yeah. So that's a good point. And so you see, now you never know what you're gonna find when you're trying to be a bad guy. Okay. My take on this is that yes, there are certainly like certain information that is like public available. And then for this type of cases, I mean, because of their government employees, so their like salary information is public available. And I'm guessing because based on what we've been talking about in this class, I mean, especially at the beginning, thinking about the disclosure risk, we're trying to make the case that it's really about multiple variables that you have information on that you'll be able to, I mean, of course, I mean, we can uniquely identify this person, John Smith, this particular person with job title, right? And then state, and also the employer and the wage, I mean, annual wage and monthly wage. What I would say is, it is pretty much like all of this is pretty much what you can get from this kind of website. And the tricky thing is it's hard to get like any extra information from this if you have like a full data set, I mean, with their full names and all that. So I think that, I mean, again, there must be a reason why they can publish this. I just don't know on the top of my head. But what I'm trying to say is, well, from this kind of information, you might get to know your neighbor a little bit better, and in a sense that you can use more information to match on the other cases. Yeah. So this type of data, like you said, it's hard to download. I mean, it's impossible to download directly. But those, I mean, definitely disclosure risks to some degree. But I'm just saying that given itself in this form, that's sort of like all we can know. And I think we can focus more on, okay, now I know this John Smith a little bit better, what else I can do? And then what we talked about mostly, I think, in this course so far, and also like in the remaining weeks, is about if you have like an entire data frame, and then there are certain things that you want to get to know a little bit more about each person, and then how to do the protection, that will be the key. Yeah. But yes, that's a good call. I mean, for public, I mean, those information are public available, and not surprisingly. Okay. All right, any other questions during your data search experience? All right, okay, so let me actually just come to the point where we are,